and now I have the distinct honor of introducing the man who is the reason why I am here tonight. I feel particularly grateful for this opportunity because I have been recently reminded of the multitude of ways that Senator Mitchell has impacted my life. In 2013, I received the Mitchell Scholarship and ventured to the University of Maine. I am now a senior at the university and can say with confidence that the Mitchell Institute and Senator Mitchell have played a major role in nearly all of my major milestones of and in my undergraduate experience. Yesterday, as I sat in the audience at the Senator George J. Mitchell lecture on sustainability and listened to Ruth DeFries speak on the challenges and opportunities of feeding modern civilization, I came to a very important realization. I realized that my academic career has been shaped by my connection to Senator Mitchell. Receiving the Mitchell Scholarship granted me the opportunity to pursue an education at the University of Maine. The Mitchell Center for Sustainability Solutions has changed the trajectory of my career aspirations through the support of my research interests. As an individual, Senator Mitchell's commitment to unifying people and persevering despite grave challenges has served as the ultimate example of my own resolve to seek solution to some of our world's most pressing problems. In short, through the work and impact of Senator Mitchell, I am gaining the education, knowledge, and skill necessary to pursue my goal of building a more sustainable world. And most importantly of all, as I looked around the audience at the Mitchell lecture yesterday, just as I look around the room now and see all of my fellow Mitchell scholars, I realized that my story is not unique. For over 20 years, the Mitchell Scholarship has been furthering the aspiration of Maine students. And so, Senator Mitchell, I wish to thank you for everything you have done for me and for all the students of Maine. You are truly the reason why I am here tonight. Indeed, you are the reason why we are all here. Please join me in welcoming Senator Mitchell to the stage. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Brady, for that truly generous introduction. And I'm certain that everybody in the room had the thought that if you ever organize a raffle, you want to make sure to get Brady there to promote it. I'm very grateful to him for his persuasive presentation, to Becky Epstein and Bruce and Marjorie Bride, who were instrumental in making possible this wonderful opportunity for travel. I don't dare to win one myself, but every time I listen to those trips, I wish I were just part of the group and had a chance to win one. You know, Brady made a great speech a few years ago at this gala, and he is a wonderful young man, a tribute to our program, as are Nicholas and Bethany also, who spoke. Now, you may not believe this, but it is true that they are representative of the larger group. They are not unique in their eloquence, in their commitment, in their passion for education. And to me, that is the greatest sense of what we are doing. We are enabling young people like this to reach their full potential. We truly were moved by their stories, and I assure you all of the others have equally compelling stories. And I hope that it does give you a feeling for what it is your contributions are going toward. I want to thank all of our board members. They lead and guide our organization, and I'd ask them to stand, please, be recognized, and have all of you join me in thanking them for their outstanding work. I especially want to thank Joe Foley, who is the Senior Vice President of Corporate Marketing and Public Relations at Unum. Joe has agreed to take over as the chair of our board this year. He's done a terrific job. Joe, thank you so much for all of the time and effort that you put in. We have a small but dedicated staff led by Meg Baxter. They are responsible for all of the work done in connection with this program, and so I ask you to join me in thanking Meg and our staff for their contribution. Many of our scholars serve as volunteers to help us after they graduate, and I want to give a special expression of gratitude to two of our long-serving Mitchell Scholar volunteers who are here tonight, Xiomara Hernandez and Clinton King. Would they please stand and join me in thanking them, Xiomara and Clinton. I also want to thank our leadership sponsors, Back Bay Tower, TD Bank, and WEX, and our prime sponsor, my beloved sister, Barbara Atkins, right here. My brothers Paul and John are here also. We had a family of 4 boys and a girl, and I've often told the story about how we had many family disputes. And at one time, it was the 4 of us against Barbara, and one of my brothers said, the 4 of us against Barbara, an even battle. Now, I want to express one more statement of gratitude. When I graduated from Waterville High School at the age of 16, my father had been out of work for a long time, and there was no money for me to go to college. I received many helping hands from people who knew nothing about me except they saw promise in me that I was not aware of. And so I ended up at Bowdoin. But I had no money, so I had to work. And a wonderful Morrow family of Brunswick took me in as though I were one of their children, hired me as a truck driver for their coal, lumber, and oil, lumber, and delivery service. And they treated me in the most generous way, and I want to especially acknowledge the presence tonight of Dick and Eleanor Morrow, 2 truly wonderful citizens of our state and country, who, but for their help, I probably would not be here this evening. So Dick and Eleanor, thank you very, very much for coming here. What happened was their cousin Mal Morrow was the athletic director at Bowdoin, and he confused me with my brother Robbie, who was a year ahead of me in high school. Robbie was a great basketball player, not as great as Johnny, but great. And in the state championship game, the year of his senior high school, Waterville defeated South Portland, and Robbie scored 21 points and was the star of the game. So when I got to Bowdoin, Mal thought I was Robbie. So he went out of his way to help me with his family to get a job. It soon became apparent to him after the first few practices that I was not who he thought I was. But he never once blinked or pulled back. And I like to think that even if the Morrows had known that I was going to grow up to become a Democrat, they still would have helped me. Well, tonight's an important fundraising night for our program, and we're grateful to all of you for being here and for your help. We hear over and over again from students that just a check is not enough. We need to do more to enable these deserving young people to succeed. They need additional support, greater resources, additional networks to create a fair chance to move forward in life. I've often said that in America, no one should be guaranteed success, but every single one should have a fair chance to succeed. And I truly believe that our Institute's work gives these young scholars that chance. The fact that we give out these scholarships sends the strong message in every community in Maine. In every public high school, there is talent, there is promise, there are future leaders. It sends the message that to combat Maine's demographic and economic challenges, we have to be willing to invest in the young Mainers who are our state's future leaders. It sends the message that we must help these young people wherever they are, every step of the way. It's not enough to give them a check and a letter of congratulations and wish them well. We all face adversity. We all struggle, and so do these young people. And they learn that they must persist, they must stick with it, and they must see it through, and we have the best graduation rate of scholars, of scholarship recipients of any program in the country. Nearly 90% of our kids graduate. We organize a series of events to form a community, to expand their connections all across the state, beyond their own home area, beyond their own institution or their age group. And so they form what we and they feel is a family. Many of you have heard me say that this program is the most important thing in my life beside my own family. So it's immensely gratifying and heartening to know that this family is a continuation of what I've learned from my own family. That education is the key to success and it takes an entire community to make that possible for every member of our society. Now, meeting these scholars, you heard just a few of them tonight, is inspiring. Not just because they're talented and thoughtful and motivated, but also because they represent the best of our people in this state. And they represent the intersection of hope and the promise of an entire generation. They will need all the support they can get. We intend to give it to them, and it is you, ladies and gentlemen, who make it all possible. Please help spread the word in your communities. If you direct a promising student towards one of our scholarships, you may transform that student's life, and it may transform your life as well, as it has mine. In the past, I've limited myself to remarks about our program. Tonight, I'd like to say a few words about broader issues facing our country, and what I believe emphasizes the importance of what we're doing here, specifically making more education available to more young Americans of promise. We're fortunate to be Americans, citizens of a country that, despite our many serious imperfections, remains, in my view, still the most open, the most just, the most free society in all of human history. The United States is the world's dominant power, and it will continue to be as far into the future as human beings can see. Although we face serious challenges at home and abroad, our military strength is by far the greatest in human history, and our economy is the world's largest and strongest and most successful by any measure. And yet, many Americans are fearful, anxious, and angry. On first impression, it seems contradictory, but in fact, it is understandable and has occurred many times in the past, in our own country and in others. Whenever there is a great transition, whenever societies are transformed in a way that some cannot foresee or understand, fear and anxiety grows, develops, and spreads. The Industrial Revolution was one of the greatest turning points in all of history. It began 250 years ago in England, as machines replaced men in the manufacture of goods. The prospect of high levels of unemployment created widespread fear and anxiety. There was unrest, there was upheaval, there was violence, there was exploitation, and there was much misery. But there also was a massive increase in productivity that created new jobs, new services, new goods. And as a result, England became the first society in history in which, as the population rose, so did the general standard of living. In our terms, they figured out that you can make the pie bigger. Over the following century, that revolution spread to most of the Western world, and it took root especially in what was then the newly created United States of America, where freedom, innovation, new people, and new ideas propelled us to the forefront of nations in the world. Today, we and the rest of the world are passing through a revolution in technology that future historians will judge to be as significant a turning point as was the Industrial Revolution. Its effects are accelerated and intensified by the dramatic growth since the Second World War of the international trade in goods and services and the movement of people across national borders. The combined effects have, as are most human actions, both positive and negative. There has been the creation of wealth without precedent, but that wealth is not being distributed throughout the whole society, and its growth is uneven geographically. As a result, many parts of our country are struggling, and many of our fellow citizens feel they are victims, not beneficiaries, of the revolution in technology. Neither we nor any other society has yet devised fully effective policies to mitigate the adverse effects of increased trade and technology, while continuing to derive the benefits that so many in our country are receiving, even as so many of our fellow citizens suffer. To do that, we need first and foremost the unity of our people and the unity of our purpose, to develop a national commitment to make good health, good education, and good jobs available to all Americans. And education is the key to all of it. We should be knowledgeable about our past. We can admire our journey from that past, but we will live all of our lives in the future. We cannot be hostage to the past, and no human society, indeed no human being, can go backward in time. Each of us is different each new day of our life, and we have to look forward and live forward. We need to recognize that we are more than just a collection of individuals. We also are citizens of a free society from which each of us derives great benefits and to which we owe responsibilities. Most modern states began as homogeneous groups, in race, in language, in religion. America has been different. Our success has been the work of people from every part of the world, of different backgrounds, different religions, different languages, all coming together, committed not to a race, not to a religion, but to an ideal, best summarized by our greatest president, Abraham Lincoln. He said his goal was to form a more perfect union. That also is the meaning of our simple and powerful motto, E pluribus unum, from many, one. We have progressed slowly, imperfectly, sometimes making huge mistakes and tragic misjudgments, but always, in the end, overcoming each challenge, emerging better and stronger. Fear and anxiety and harsh responses in times of transition are not new. Even the sources of fear and anxiety are not new. For the first century of its existence, the United States welcomed immigrants from anywhere and everywhere to help fill a vast continent. The first restrictions on immigration came in 1882. These days, members of Congress have developed a skill at the titling of bills, fancy titles that sometimes don't actually reflect what's in the bill, in fact, sometimes even contradict what's in the bill. Back then, they were more blunt. So the first immigration law that passed was titled the Chinese Exclusion Act, and it excluded from America anyone of Chinese heritage. It was a reaction to the entry of thousands of Chinese workers who came from the West, along with many thousands of Irish workers who came from the East to help build the railroad that connected our country. In 1906, a major earthquake devastated San Francisco. Unable to accommodate all of the children whose schools had been destroyed, the city adopted an ordinance to build temporary schools and to shrink the student body by prohibiting any child of Japanese ancestry from entering any public school in San Francisco, even those who had been born in the United States. Even earlier, from the very beginning, when Spanish, Dutch, English, and French settlers fought one another and the Native Americans for control of North America, there was discrimination against, hostility toward, and opposition of anyone who was different. Everyone's heard the words Wall Street. Where do they originate? Well, it's a small street just north of the southern tip of Manhattan that in the early 17th century marked the northern boundary of the Dutch settlement that they called New Amsterdam. And there the Dutch built a wall to keep out the people they regarded as different and hostile. Not the Native Americans, as many assume, but the English, who had settled in New England and were working their way down through Connecticut into New York. And of course, the Dutch fears realized they were in fact overrun by the English, and New Amsterdam became New York. Later, successive waves of Italians and Irish, here in Maine and other parts of New England, French Canadians, of Jews and Catholics, and many others, were met with hostility, exclusion, racial and religious stereotyping, and discrimination. Every Irish American is aware of the signs that appeared across all major cities. Irish need not apply. And the cartoons that were published in newspapers and magazines all over the eastern United States depicting the Irish as subhuman. Every Italian American remembers that because a few of them were mafia criminals, all were stigmatized as criminals, and many used the words mafia and Italian as synonymous. We remember the Ku Klux Klan mostly for its violence against African Americans in the South in the 1880s and 90s. But in fact, the Klan reached its peak in the North in the 1920s on a program of extreme hostility toward Catholics and Jews. And other than African Americans, no group has suffered more discrimination longer than have American Jews. And yet, just take a minute to look back over our recent history and see the tremendous contributions made to and for our country by Irish Americans, by Italian Americans, by Asian, by African Americans, by French Canadians in Maine and other New England states, by Catholics, and by Jews. The earliest of them withstood the hostility and the hatred, the harsh words, and sometimes the violence. They got their hands on the bottom rung of the ladder of American success, and they pulled themselves up. And their children and their grandchildren, some of us here tonight, stood on their shoulders and climbed even higher, in many cases, to the very pinnacles of success. Now, of course, every rational and reasonable American knows that we cannot accept everyone who wants to come to this country. What may have been a sensible policy in the 1800s is impossible today. So many people want to come here that common sense and national survival make clear that in our national interest, we need policies that place fair and realistic limits on how many can enter and who they are. But I believe we should focus on who we want to come and how we can continue to replenish our society with new people to their benefit and to ours. Surely, the American people and their elected representatives has the capacity, has the ability to engage in a serious national debate based on facts, grounded in reason, to establish a sensible policy on immigration that meets the many national interests that we have and that are affected by this issue. And as we do so, we should keep in mind that from the very beginning to this very day, America has been enriched by new people, new ideas, new energy, new vision. 3 of the most valuable and successful business enterprises in the world are Apple, Amazon, and Google. Apple was created by Steve Jobs, whose father was born in Syria. Amazon was created by Jeff Bezos, whose adoptive father was born in Cuba. And the co-founder of Google was Sergey Brin, himself born in Russia. Tonight, as you drive home, I ask you to think about 2 rhetorical questions. Would the United States be a better country if they had not been admitted? And of equal importance, what do you think the chances are that had Steve Jobs lived his life in Syria, he would have created Apple? Or Jeff Bezos in Havana and Amazon? Or Sergey Brin in Russia and Google? Genius knows no language, no race, no religion. It can be found wherever human beings exist. But it is more likely to flourish where there is freedom, education, and opportunity for all, where innovation is encouraged and success is celebrated and applauded. And that is surely the case now in America. There are so many examples. It's been a long evening, so I'll cite just a few. Despite all of the negative talk of American decline, although we represent 6% of the world's population, 9 of the 10 most valuable business brands in the world are American. 15 of the world's top 20 universities are American. 91% of all online searches in the world are done through American companies, and 99% of smartphones work on American-made operating systems. Just in the last few weeks, of the 4 Americans who received the Nobel Prize, 3 are immigrants. The reality that our strength, American strength, lies ultimately in our ideals is one of the most significant factors in our progress. Military power and economic strength are necessary and important. But in the United States, they have been infused with the ideals that are the basis and the promise of American life. They're not easily summarized, but surely they include the sovereignty of the people, individual liberty, our highest value, opportunity for all, an independent judicial system, and the rule of law applied equally to all and, crucially, to the government itself. Our Constitution is more than just a compilation of laws and procedures. It is a work of political and literary genius. It also is a statement of the ideals and a symbol of American values, especially the bedrock principles of equal justice and equal rights for every single person in America. Despite all of the negative talk and the drumbeat of tragedy that now dominates the news, I believe deeply in the promise in the future of America, and that belief is strongly reinforced by listening to these 3 young people here tonight. We have much to be concerned about. We have many problems, but we have much, much more to be thankful for. And I'm convinced that the 21st century, led by people like Brady and Nicholas and others, will in almost every way be better and stronger than ever before. My hope is that we have the wisdom, and especially the young people, Bethany, I did mention you before, have the wisdom to use that strength to extend education, opportunity, and hope to more and more people in our country and all around the world. Thank you all very, very much for being here this evening.